How long has the race been going for?
36 years now. It will be 37 years by the time we start. And I will be the second Australian solo female rider in 37 years.
So Sabine, we're going to cover off on the terrain now, some of what you're preparing for in your training. You've mentioned initially the heat's a bit of an issue. You go through the Arizona desert. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So the Arizona desert gets up to 50 degrees, which is very hot, and a lot of people are usually forced to abandon the race after 2 days and after crossing the desert because of heat strokes, heat exertion, and just being not prepared for the heat. So what my plan is to ride in the heat, prepare for it, and also make sure we have appropriate clothing in terms of ice vests, increased fluid intake. We always have someone that watches it. We have clothes like base layers that are good at absorbing the sweat and make sure that we have means of for sweat to leave the body and evaporate instead of getting trapped. So there's a lot you can do actually if you prepare.
Yeah, so you'll be doing a lot of cooling during the ride.
Yes.
Ice slushies, I presume, ice vests.
Yep.
Watered down the clothing.
Yeah, to a certain degree. You don't want to get your cycling too wet because then it comes with the risk of chafing, and you can't afford to have too many wounds or even scratches. So yes, even if we do pour water over me regularly, we still have to make sure that we get changed a lot more often than you would normally do.
Okay, great. And the total climbing, how are you going to prepare for some of the altitude?
So with the altitude, that might be a little bit of an issue. The climbing adds up to 52,000 meters, as mentioned earlier, but what we do is I try to adapt to the altitude over a long period of time, over several months, by sleeping in an altitude tent regularly, slowly increasing the equivalent altitude, and possibly also make use of a training session at low oxygen levels later on in the preparation, not too early.
Yeah. So once you get over that kind of through the Arizona desert, the initial Rocky Mountains, you've also got some seasonal weather to contend with.
So that will be a bit of an issue. The main problem is that going from the west to the east coast, we're probably going to face a headwind for most of the time. At the same time, there are a lot of tornadoes in June in America, and so the wind is most likely not to be in our favor, but the training will involve, here in Perth at least, will involve to just embrace the windy conditions. Summer's good for that, we always have the strong winds, and just be as strong as I can in the wind and doing my training sessions here.
Yeah, and so last and certainly not least, you've got the total distance that's got to be covered over the maximum allowed time frame, which is just over 12 days, is that correct?
Yes, just over 12 days for the women. They get an extra 20 hours, I think, compared to the men. So to cover 5,000 kilometers in 12 days is a little bit of an issue because you need to keep up an average speed, and that average speed includes your breaks, your stops, your sleeping time, which means you have to churn up a few kilometers in a day in order to make sure you're going to hit all the time stations on time. That means not much sleep.
Not much sleep. And so for the viewers at home who might be tracking you as far as how you go across the whole almost 2-week period, what average speed are you looking at?
So in previous years, the women that made it through, they averaged about 20 k's an hour. That included all the stops. So I think I'm aiming for that, but I would get away with 19 or 18 as well.
Wow, okay.
Every day for 24 hours, that is.